Hello, everybody. Welcome to bluArc's final presentation of 2011. Season's greetings to you all. This is Rick Koonders. I'm VP of Marketing and Business Development at bluArc Communications. And today we're going to change things a little bit on our webinar. In fact, I'm going to be interviewing a gentleman named Scott Williams. Scott Williams is President and CEO of iVero Communications. iVero Communications also does bluArc's marketing. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to put a different spin on this webinar to talk a little bit about how marketing can be assisted by a telephone system, how you can generate revenue from your telephone system, and how marketing can use the telecommunications system to integrate some of its services to companies like bluArc Communications. Scott, if you want to introduce yourself.
Rick, you've done a great job. As Rick has said, I'm Scott Williams. I'm the President and CEO of iVero Marketing Communications Group. And today in this webinar, I guess we're just going to talk about some of the best practices that you can use in marketing utilizing your phone system.
So we'll be about 30 minutes into this presentation. After 30 minutes, we'll open it up for a few questions. I guess why don't we get started, Scott? Let's talk about brand. You always talk to bluArc Communications about brand. What is it that you mean when you say brand to companies like us and other companies that you work with?
Yes, the elusive brand question. The reason I wanted to discuss this today is because I think a lot of the times there's confusion in the business world of what the meaning of brand is. And a lot of times we find that both with our clients as well as just the world in general, is a lot of people tend to refer to brand as their overall, I guess, physical attributes, like their corporate colors, their logos, their collateral, and that type of thing. And it really, as much as that's a part of brand, it really doesn't, I think, summarize what brand truly is. The way that we usually describe it to our clients is that there's really only two aspects to brand. It's the first being, obviously, which is the message that you market as a company. And that's very important in that, how you speak to your target demographic and how it relates to those that you're trying to market to. And I'm using air quotes here, I guess the unfortunate part of it is that, and this is the most important part of brand, is that it's the living up to the message that you market, which is the important part. Which I guess really brings us to this webinar today, is that the example I always give as far as living up to the message that you market, if you look at any of the big brands out there in the world, and probably the easiest and best one we can use an example of because they're always in the news is Apple.
Right.
The example that I give from a brand experience perspective is simply if you've ever ordered anything online from the Apple Store as opposed to any other e-commerce site, right? And this is where that warm fuzzy feeling of brand comes into play. If you were to either phone Apple or you order something online or whatever it may be, even though it's relatively automated throughout the process, the minute you enter, say for instance, your credit card information, right up until the point where something ends up showing up at your door, you are tracked via email and given messages saying, hey, your order has been confirmed, your order's been shipped, it's crossed the border. Your doorbell rings and you say, hey, thanks, and you sign it, for FedEx, and 5 minutes later you get an email saying, was the packaging okay? Were you happy with this experience? And that unto itself speaks to brand. That is how people will look at this and say, wow, this company I trust. I always have a good, we'll say, user experience with them, and that type of thing, which is really what brand is. And again, living up to the message that you market.
What you've always said to me is that everything a company does can contribute or detract from your brand.
Absolutely, absolutely, and this goes into the, your phone system and your brand, and it's, does it reinforce your brand? And it's, I think a lot of people tend to look at, again, marketing as these kind of ideas of, well, it's we have collateral, we have our products, that type of thing. But you think of even now in the day of social media, for instance, is that you can destroy your quote-unquote brand really quickly through just even a bad customer experience with one customer.
Right.
Because immediately they can, critique your company via Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, and it's out there. So we asked the question, does your phone system represent and reinforce your brand? And
Right.
really, we need to discuss, I guess, some of those points, and that, how do you think your customers relate to you when they pick up the phone? Because ultimately, let's face it, right, is that in this day and age still, out of all the marketing that you can do in the world, realistically, people talk about conversion rates, they talk about all these things, and they make it sound really, really technical. At the end of the day, most people still just want to talk to somebody in person.
Right.
Right? So one of the things is that, does your auto attendant, for instance, and I'm using actually like real-time examples here, represent your company name or branding? I'll give you an example is that, we just started working with a company just in the last few weeks, is that their company name is not actually even represented. It's a completely different URL company name when you visit their site. And when you call them, it's not actually the company that they're marketing. You're getting the phone picked up and the auto attendant is giving the name of a different company.
Oh, wow.
So, and I know that, a lot of people perhaps listening today go, well, that's ridiculous. Why would that ever happen? But you'd be surprised on how many companies actually fall into that trap where it's even if the name of your company isn't slightly represented on your auto attendant, people might just go, oh, it must be a wrong number, and hang up. Right there, that's a marketing failure. Another one is that what's the customer experience when they call? And I think, again, we can use real-time examples. I think all of us in this room have ultimately called a large corporation, whether it be for your internet service at home, your bank, you name it. It's and I like to call it being lost in sort of auto attendant hell. Right? It's all you want to do, again, is talk to somebody. And a lot of the times, companies will go out of their way to set up their auto attendant. So if you hit 0, they simply, hoping you can skip through everything and get to somebody, they'll just say, oh, no, sorry, that's not an option. Or they'll give you press 1 to do this, press 2 to do this, press 3 to do this. And it goes on, for 9 or 10 choices. And then you choose one, and then it gives you another 10 choices and another 10. And it's like you seem to be going deeper into a system, but you
Right.
never quite get to what you want. And again, that's one of those things that if we go back to that true meaning of brand, when we talk about living up to the message that you market, and do people have that great customer experience and that warm, fuzzy feeling when dealing with your company, certain things of just setting up your auto attendant so that when people call, you make it easy for them to find out, what it's all about finding out information that they want, right? So it's that if I only have to press 1 or 2 buttons and I can speak to really the person that I want, and that's the ultimate goal, is that regardless of how many people live off of social media today and via email and their smartphones and all that kind of functionality, at the end of the day, people still want to talk to someone in person. Another example is is your terminology consistent with the outside world? And the reason I bring this up is that, and not to name names, but in a past life when I before I came to Ivero and started the company, is that I worked for a very, very large corporation. And one of the things that they would do is that when people would call, and again, this is the internal terminology versus external terminology, is that people would phone up and simply say, I'd like to speak to someone in customer assistance. Now, I think that's fairly simple in that, everybody knows that term customer assistance. You would think that, look, I'm just looking for account information, whatever that may be.
Sure, support.
Exactly. Oddly enough, internally, from the corporate culture internal marketing engine, was that term actually referred to the collections department. Because internally they were like, well, we're assisting our customers with paying their bills. Now, that's really great, and you can, it is what it is when it comes to that corporate terminology for making everybody drink the corporate Kool-Aid, I guess. But the unfortunate part is that we saw issues where people were, look, I just want somebody in customer assistance. Then they get through, well, what do you mean I'm talking to somebody in collections? Oh no, you want some other completely different department with this, weird acronym to it, which the outside world would never know about. So even then, now think about that customer experience. If you're the one that's calling in, you've waited on hold, you've gone through an auto attendant, you've shown, you've spoken to maybe 2 or 3 people at this point, and now you're still being transferred from person to person to person because they can't understand because of their own internal terminology that you just want to speak to somebody in what you believe is customer assistance. Again, that's an issue.
So your phone system should reflect your brand just as some other elements of your marketing will reflect your brand as well. I wanted to make a quick comment. I see it all the time where you'll call into a customer, it'll be an incorrect name, it'll be an auto attendant that is static, you know it's never changed in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I found is that systems just tend to be so complicated that people just don't bother changing it. So it no longer does reflect their brand. It reflects brand from 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's one, we sort of track marketing failures as well on the internet. You always get these funny, maybe sad stories of companies, and there is actually a very large telecom company that someone just commented on a few months ago that they got a Happy Holidays 1998 or something, and it was like,
right.
Really? And it's, or they're referring to even, specials and promotions that were going on 2 or 3 years ago because you're so far into an auto attendant that this stuff has been forgotten about, and, 10 people have left the company in that role that was probably responsible for that by the time you even get to it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. If and when you're looking for a phone system to truly market your company, is that you want to make sure that it's easy to use, that it has, you can log on just online and change whatever you need or record a message or something and track it from that perspective even internally as opposed to, these big monsters as you speak of where things kind of get lost in the shuffle.
You know what I've really found interesting is I see a lot of emails, like most of us do nowadays, that come along, and emails oftentimes have footers on them that indicate what the company is, links to our website, all of those kinds of things. I rarely see that in phone systems. What's your experience?
Well, yeah, and it's as the slide shows, right? So you use your email, right? Everybody does. Everybody, in the business world probably gets, if you're lucky like me, you get at least, 150 to 200 emails a day from people that want to talk to you.
Right.
It's really the question, from a methodology perspective, if you're using email from a communications perspective, and think about this for a moment. If someone emails you, we seem to have this, I don't know what, an ingrained nature to respond to that email immediately. Right. I think at this point too, we've been conditioned to the point where we expect someone to respond immediately, right? So if you're looking at it from that perspective, is that when someone even calls, think of it in that respect. If you were to email someone and you're expecting an email back right away, now put yourself in the shoes of your client, is that if they're calling you, would they not expect an immediate response as well? And yes, of course, if we get into the idea of, say, for instance, voicemail, and let's not even discuss sort of the personal voicemail aspect. Let's just discuss, like when you call a company and it says, oh, it's, you've reached, well, we'll say customer assistance, for instance, and it's the, leave a message and someone will get back to you. Okay, someone will get back to you when? And it's, again, when we look at that, and going back to that very first concept of branding, is that we want to make sure that people have the expectation of service. You want to live up to that message that you market. So it really comes down to, have you set a policy internally or metrics internally for callbacks? So if, for instance, somebody, if there's a voicemail box out there somewhere, do you have the internal allocation of resources that someone is actually going to check that email, or the voicemail box? And don't laugh, but we've gone into very, very large companies to help with marketing. Some of the largest brands in the world that you've heard of. And literally it's oh yeah, we have that 1-800 number on all of our collateral. Oh, and who answers that? And everyone looks around the room suddenly with this stunned look of awe on their face going, oh my God, does anyone know if anyone's even answering that phone or checking that voicemail box? And again, it's easy to add that phone number, even say for instance to a campaign or whatever that may be. But again, from that allocation of resources, has anyone actually thought to go down the food chain and go, maybe we should have somebody answer that phone? Maybe we should have somebody checking that voicemail. And again, what are the metrics and policies set to that? If you have, again, and this goes back to reinforcing brand. If somebody calls customer assistance and they get a voicemail box that says, one of our representatives will get back to you within, is it 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever that may be, make sure that that promise is being kept to that client, right? And it's I think important for companies in all aspects of marketing and not just the phone system, but a phone system really to me is one of the most primary ways to garner leads and business for a company and retain clients, is that make sure you're measuring back against that. Make sure that that goes even into the directors' meetings every week, where it's a metric that's being reviewed. Have we gotten back to people in an appropriate amount of time? Have we gotten adequate responses across the board, so that again that becomes something that is qualifiable and quantifiable that you can apply back to that brand experience.
I remember years ago, and I'm old enough to remember years ago, where people would call into a company to find out information about those companies' services. The thing is, nowadays, that doesn't happen as often as it used to, because websites certainly have replaced that. And so
Absolutely.
what I found is, rather than the phone systems becoming less important, they become more important, because when people call in, they actually want to do business with you. They've gone through your website, they've looked at it, and if the experience that they find when they call into your company is a disappointing one, it's like, geez, I can't reach anybody. What the heck?
It is funny because you bring up a very good point, right? Is that I know that for our company, we get calls, from new clients all the time, where it's we want a new website, we want a new campaign, we want new collateral, communications, and it seems to revolve more and more around, we'll say the more advanced technology and technological concepts, right? Is that everybody wants it tied to an app. Everybody wants a website to do something cool. At the end of the day, I think they forget at times where it's when you're qualifying a client through good communications on your website or your collateral or any kind of events, webinars, anything that you're doing. At the end of the day, there's a very good chance that they're wanting to pick up the phone and talk to somebody or find out more information. And you're absolutely right. Again, it goes back to sort of that auto attendant scenario, is that you can utilize that in a way that, do you want to drive people to, say, a certain email address even? Maybe it's simply if you need technical support, please email techsupport@yourdomain.com, and someone will be back to you within 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that may be, because perhaps that's the process by which your company maintains that process inside the company, right? Is that it's like, no, tech support has to go through email because we need to track it. It could be a URL. It could be, there's a lot of things that people, again, forget to put even just on a basic message. And sometimes it's even, there always are those people that maybe found you. Remember those things? I don't know if anyone remembers these. They're called the Yellow Pages. It was this big book that used to get delivered to your door, and it's. But again, there are still people that live in that way. Look at business cards, right? I mean, let's face it. All of us in business still have a piece of paper that we hand to people. Maybe that's at the end of the day, people are just calling because they got your card at a function, they met you at lunch, they met you at a group meeting between a bunch of companies. Again, what's the experience they're getting? Are there FAQs, for instance, that you want to send them to online? Maybe it's something that pre-qualifies people, again, for an extra step. Where are those FAQs? Do they reside within your system? Do they reside on a website? Is there something they can download? Whatever that may be. But again, those are things to take into consideration when you're the same as email. Right? It's just that easy business function, right? If you have a campaign running, chances are you may have it in your signature on your email. Would you not just put that same thing in your auto attendant?
So we deal with a lot of small businesses. Small businesses certainly want to act big, act more professional.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get down to the crux of it. So you're a small business. you have a phone system. How do you use that as a marketing tool?
Well, good question, and I think it's, we get questions all the time from clients, and I think this is the biggest one too, is that, well, we understand the concept of marketing, but we don't understand that concept of lead generation, perhaps. And the way that we describe utilizing your phone system is that it is a campaign asset like anything else. So whether or not you're dealing with, it could be a print campaign in a magazine, a direct mail campaign, email campaigns, websites, social media, I mean, the list of vehicles go on and on. But again, it really comes down to how people want to communicate with your company. So say for instance, if we were to roll out a campaign for bluArc this week, which, well, as a matter of fact,
We are.
So, because that's what we do pretty much every week for you guys. But the idea really becomes this, is that when you list off your campaign assets, think about drawing that line, that connector between all of your different pieces within that marketing blast that goes out, right? So like I said, it could be print, it could be email, whatever that may be. When we say campaign assets, we'll say, okay, today we're going to run a print ad. Unless, because let's face it, I mean, as much as people say print is dead, no, it's just it's one means of delivering a message, right? We all remember back in the day when we had nothing but newspapers and magazines and this whole internet thing didn't exist. So say we run a print campaign. Well, that's one asset within the campaign that can be measured. So we know, say we go to a big magazine and they will give us a stat of what their pickup value is, what their retention value is of that magazine, and how many people read that magazine per every copy purchase, right? So they'll say, oh, well, at least 3 people see this magazine for every, So we know that there's a metric that we can apply to that ad campaign, but we still haven't gotten to that conversion aspect yet.
Correct.
Well, a campaign asset on that ad may be a 1-800 number that you have, because it's the call to action says, do you want to learn more about our company? Do you want if it's a promotion, whatever that may be? And that phone number becomes something that is easily trackable within your system. I mean, right down to the point where you don't even need a really sophisticated system. Realistically, if you have someone answering the phone on the other end, you could have a napkin and a Sharpie and just tick off every time the phone rings to measure the effectiveness of that ad campaign. But again, it's going back and tying metrics to things so you can say, is our phone system working appropriately, and are people picking up the phone and calling us? Because that's one of those things that we all want people to do in the end.
So as a marketing tool, is your phone system playing an effective role in the overall deployment of print campaigns, web campaigns,
Yeah.
whatever it may be? So your point is ultimately somebody's going to call you. How do you track that back to the performance of various other campaigns?
And here's an interesting one that we can equate to, because again, we mentioned things like websites and that type of thing, and all the modern conveniences that are allotted to us in this day and age. One of the things that we talk to with clients all the time, and this goes to web development and email campaign development and those type of things. But say for instance, if you visit a website, there are things now called courtesy links. And we'll link this to the modern concept of the smartphone. Is that a courtesy link is simply, what are the 2 most important ways that people want to connect with your company? Phone and email. Well, if you go to a really well-designed website, realistically, there will be a phone number in the top right-hand corner of every page on the website, excuse me, and a button to email us, right, from that company. So if you look at it from a marketing campaign perspective, and you are driving even, say, people to your website through a campaign, your phone system is still a huge asset. If your website is set up right, realistically, I can pick up my smartphone and click your phone number and it will call you. So again, it's even tying the simplest of technology back to that concept that people really do want to just speak to another person in person. Right? So again, a really simple way to integrate your phone system into everything that you do and make it easy for people to call you. And I think really it comes back to that concept of, are you truly measuring the effectiveness of what your phone system does, and are you tying it back to your brand and that experience that people get? If I get an email from you, campaign, and I want to call you, and it says, call us today for your 15% off, am I going to be put on hold for 45 minutes? Or is somebody going to pick up and say, I'm really happy to hear from you. Thanks for calling.
Or are they going to pick up and say, oh, you're calling about a discount?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could connect those?
What discount? What? And internally they're like, are we running a campaign today? What's going right? Again, you want to make sure that everybody's on board, and you know that that's...
So your point is that you should be able to tie technically your phone system into your overall marketing campaigns, and you should be able to derive metrics from it.
Exactly. So regardless whether it's print, it's direct mail, it's email, it's your website, it's even social media. I mean, how easy it is. You can tweet a phone number for whatever the purposes may be, right? If it's a 15% off special just today, tweet the phone number and make sure you've got the people allocated to pick up the phones.
We're almost out of time. I want to give you a quick example of one of our customers that actually extended the metrics a little bit beyond what you're talking about here, where they actually handle scholarships on behalf of large corporations that want to give money to students. These large corporations pay this company to manage the scholarships. They also want to know that this company is performing well on its behalf, because they're actually representing that company. And they actually use their phone system to track call volume based on various scholarships. People will call in, enter in a specific code as it relates to a scholarship, and that gets tracked and sent back to these major corporations who want to fund these scholarships. So for them, it actually has become a lifeline for their revenue that they receive for managing these scholarships on behalf of companies. So it's an interesting approach to it, something a little bit different. I want to finish up. We have a few minutes left. Phone systems, everyday life. Are you connected to your business? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think, and this goes back to everything else that we've discussed, is that, again, we talk about brand experience. That's great. At the end of the day, maybe even separating that out from, the marketing communications departments within your company, whatever that may be, is that, look at it from your voicemail or call forwarding. If you're on vacation and you say, hey, I'll be on vacation for the next 3 weeks, and you're the only contact perhaps that your current clients have within your company, perhaps putting just, even, and again, maybe this sounds silly to some of the listeners out there, but it's the idea that while I'm away, you can contact this person. Now think of, again, from a brand experience, right? Do you want to feel as though you're left high and dry from somebody going on vacation for a couple weeks? Or do you want to feel as though, well, even though that person went away, they've still put me in touch with someone else that still has the ability to, do whatever I need and handle the files that, my account, whatever that is. And again, it goes back to building that brand perspective. Even certain things like using functionality that a lot of people don't use, like call forwarding. In this day and age, people go on working vacations all the time. Perhaps just forwarding your work, your work phone to your cell phone and using that functionality just so that you can pick up, maybe even just while you're traveling in the car or whatever it may be until you get to your destination. Just so, again, you're shortening the time away from the office and, again, building that brand experience that person, you're always there. And then, there's all the functionality, and I'm sure that anyone that wants to learn about anything from twinning to,
voicemail to email,
all those type of things, bluarc.ca can explain all of that kind of aspects. But again, there's a lot of tools out there, again, when you apply it back to that concept of brand, which, I'll reiterate again, is that it's the message that you market, but more importantly, living up to the message that you market. And I think your phone system is one of the most important things that you can utilize to ensure that you are redefining every day you're redefining your brand promise to people and making it better and better. And you're living up to, at the very least, your brand promise in that every time they pick up the phone, they're going to get a chance to get the information that they are looking for or speak to the person they're looking for.
To your point, with all the various ways of people reaching your company, when they actually do choose to call you, that you're responding quickly, promptly, accurately, in a professional way, and that your phone system has the capabilities to do that.
Well, exactly, because at the end of the day, no matter how great your marketing communications are and all of the different things that you may throw out there to the world, somebody, if it's truly done well, and you've already even 3/4 of the way convinced somebody that they want to work with your company, they're going to pick up the phone and call you. Make sure you're there to answer it.
So let's keep our commitment. We said we'd go about 30 minutes. We're pretty much there right
Exactly.
now. I'll take a look and see if we have any questions from the floor. Actually, I think
No.
people are prepared to go celebrate the season.
As I think we all are.
As we all should. So why don't we end it there? Thank you for your attendance at bluArc's final webinar. As usual, it'll be available on our YouTube. What's the URL? Do you have that offhand?
Actually,
Off
just
to our main site.
just bluArc.ca, and then you can actually click on all of the social media aspects. So we'll make sure that this video is tweeted with the link. You can check out the YouTube links, the LinkedIn, and it'll be available on the website as always. So.
And if you do want to call bluArc, you can take a look at the upper right-hand corner of our website.
And you can click on it and call you with your smartphone.
So we'll end it there. Thank you very much, Scott. I really appreciate it. And,
Thank you.
I look forward to speaking with you in the new year and having a few more webinars.
Thank you.
Thanks.